It's February, the month of love. I know you are probably getting sick of it already, but we aren't even to Valentine's Day yet. And so, since we aren't quite there, I just want to talk to you a little bit about what love means, some of the things that I've learned over time, and maybe you've learned these things as well. Maybe you haven't, so maybe you'll learn something today. And, I didn't want to talk about how you love, everybody around you and how you love your partner, but I just want to maybe focus on some of those other aspects, the aspects of love that are talked about in the Bible. And I've learned more about this over the years, and it's being talked about in my church currently. And I just wanted to bring it to you and share what I've learned, and hopefully you could take something away from that too. So thank you for joining me today for the Cultivating Calmness podcast. We're going to jump right in. So I go to church every week, and they always have a message or a theme that they usually group in several weeks at a time. And February tends to be the month where we talk about love in different ways, shapes, and forms. And, not everybody that's out there obviously is a Christian or practicing Christian or reads the Bible or cares. And that's okay. I don't think you need to be a Christian or to study the Bible to care about or learn or know or accept or appreciate even the different types of love that are referenced in the Bible. And you may notice that for yourselves in your everyday life. And actually, I'm going to have to semi-copy what one of our pastors said a couple weeks ago. 𝐂𝐩𝐢𝐬𝐬 was talking about, the different ways we love, right? You have probably, maybe even in the same sentence, like, I love you, hubby, and, I love these nachos. Do you love the nachos and your husband in the exact same way? No. Right? You don't love them in the exact same way, but yet we use that same word to describe two very different types of love. The way you love your brother and sister or your parents or your cousins may be different, they may be different for each of those people, but it also may be different and should be different between the love you have for a spouse and the love you have for your friends. So there are all those different kinds of love that are expressed in the Bible. And, you may even find that there are additional types of love that you experience. And with that, I hope that we can learn from this, not only how to love each other, but to love the people around us and the world around us, despite our differences. And I think that's the big key takeaway today. There are a lot of things going on in the world around us right now, and it can be very hard to maybe show love for other people and show care for other people because maybe we feel so strongly about them in some way or the things that they believe or the things that they're doing. And what the Bible tells us really is that we should be loving people no matter what, no matter like whether they deserve it or not, and whether we necessarily agree with the things that they are doing because they are human beings. And that's a hard thing, even for me to accept sometimes, because there are people that are in our lives that we maybe don't like, and we don't like the things that they're promoting. We don't like the way that they talk to us or the way that they behave. And yet we're asked to and called to love them despite all of those things. Now, love and like are two different things. Loving someone doesn't mean you have to accept poor treatment, but it's maybe that understanding of how do I give them and show them that they are a human and that they are loved, but maybe it's not the same way that you would love somebody that you know is your best friend, that you get along really well with. And I think that's where it's hard. So when it comes from a spiritual realm and a religious realm, then God calls us to love unconditionally as He loves us. And I think God knows that we can't meet that, but we are asked to try. So there are in the Bible, there are different words that were used. And now when we see it in the Bible, typically, I guess it depends on which version of the Bible you read, which translation. But in English, we're going to see the word love in most instances and may not see these other versions that I'm going to describe because those were in other languages like Greek, how the Bible is like originally written in the languages they were originally written. And that's why, when it's translated, the translation isn't always given in its full meaning. And that's why I like going to church. That's why I like learning from other people who have studied the Bible more than I have, who have maybe done the research on language and the times to know, like, when this was said at this time, this is what it actually meant versus maybe the way that we are interpreting it today. And so some of those ways that love is described in the Bible are, now I may not say these exactly correctly, so you'll have to forgive me if you know how to say these correctly. Good for you. I'm going to do my best. So eros, that's considered that romantic love, that passionate physical romance love that you have with somebody that you are like falling in love with, married to, is something along those lines. And then we have storge, which is the familial love, the love you have for a mother, father, sister, brother, cousin, family members. That's that natural affection, the protective instincts you have, things of that nature. And we have philia. You may recognize philia. There is a city that has that word in it, Philadelphia, and it's called the city of brotherly love. That's right. And that is that friendship love. That's that, deep bond that we have with other people, and that kind of like that warm affection that we have for the friends that we have. And then lastly, there's agape love. You've probably heard of agape. I know there are like even churches called agape, and that references the divine, sacrificial, unconditional love that God has for us and that he would like for us to have for our fellow mankind, which is, impossible because we're not God. But it's something that we can strive for. It's something that we choose to try to do, no matter like our failings or the difficulties that we have. And, we will not always do it right. We aren't going to always do it right because we aren't, God, but we also are capable of showing love and affection and, for other people despite our differences. And I've seen that coming up a lot recently in just the world, the politics, the things going on. And so I'm not here to take aside either way. I have, my own perspectives, and my family has their perspectives. My friends have theirs. My clients have theirs. And that's okay. I think that we all live in a world where we should be able to get along despite our differences, despite maybe our very vastly different beliefs. And, the world that we live in today is not the world that our parents lived in. It's not the world that their parents lived in, etc. The world is changing rapidly, and we currently today are faced with a lot of information. My colleague, Allie, said this in a training a long time ago, and, we've talked about this, but we get more information in like an hour than our parents, great-grandparents, etc. got in, a month or, 6 months. We know more about the world and what's going on outside of our sphere than, past generations knew, maybe in several years' time. So we are processing a lot of information, and we're taking all that on. And then within all of that, like, we could talk about that in and of itself for hours and the effects that can have on our lives. But what we're forgetting is that, we came from a place of wanting to love and connect and respect and be around other people. I know I grew up with neighbors that, our garage doors were open all the time. and we wouldn't just like close our garage doors, and you could run into your neighbor's house and go play with them, and vice versa, and you could run around the neighborhood and disappear for hours, and you weren't disappeared, you weren't kidnapped, you didn't run away, you were just playing, you were having fun because the world was safer, because we had trust. And I don't want to go down into another rabbit hole, but a lot of that has to do with the love and respect that we have for each other. Do we have that philia love? Do we have the storge love? Do we have the agape love for other people? I would say that now it's less obvious, and in some areas we see that, but in other areas it seems to be lacking or missing for one reason or another. And what would the world look like? What would our relationships with other people look like if we could maybe set aside our differences and just love them as a person, knowing that, hey, you're a human being. And because you have a beating heart and lungs that work and a working brain and, eyes, mouth, nose, ears, and you can communicate with me, that I, should show you some level of respect and care. Despite the things that maybe you believe or I believe that may be different and maybe butt heads, because underneath all of that, we are still human, and that is something that we innately share. And that's, even separate from like the love we have for animals and the love we have for other living beings and things, right? Just the love we have for each other. I'm definitely not perfect at it. There are relationships that, I can struggle with, and I'm, working on it, where I know that I'm called to forgive, or I'm called to pray for people, pray for your enemies. Right. So if you are a believer in anything, but if you're a believer in God, when we are struggling and when we have difficulty with somebody, family, friend, enemy of some kind, it's not we're asked to pray for them, and not a prayer of, hey, God, can you please fix them and make them be nice? That's not the kind of prayer he's asking for, at least from what I've learned, right? The prayer that he's asking us to pray is to pray for them wholeheartedly, to, pray for what they may need. So if they are treating you poorly, there's probably something that they need that they're not getting. He's asking us to pray for them because of that. They've done something to hurt you. We pray for them to find healing, to find what they need, versus finding what we need through their healing or through them doing something different. And that's hard. I'm currently, experiencing that. And, I have to remind myself when I find myself like getting angry, it's not that I don't get angry. I do. But also saying like, okay, I'm supposed to be doing this, and it's not really what I want to be doing. I may not like what that person is saying or doing over there. I may not like the politics that that person is expressing. But I do, maybe like them as a person. I do recognize the good that they provide to the world and the things that they can do. So how can I recognize that and maybe potentially separate the two and still show that love of that person? Again, I'm not perfect at it. I've definitely messed up. I've definitely messed up recently. And it's hard. So, I don't talk about this to preach as if I'm some kind of expert. I'm definitely not. I am learning along with, everybody else out there. And I like to share things that I've learned with you because I think it's helpful to learn. So if I've learned it and I didn't know, I'm sure someone out there also doesn't know it. And, yeah, so I just wanted to come and talk about that. As Valentine's Day is coming up, how can we show love for other people? And are we doing that? Are we like that self-analyzing, looking at what we're doing and how we're doing it? Have we done everything we could do? Are we recognizing the roles that we play in other people's lives, and are we using them to the best of our ability, or are they lacking? Is that something we could improve upon? How might we improve upon that? How might we show other people love and care and affection that maybe feels like it's wrong? So, in therapy world, like just because it feels wrong doesn't mean it is wrong. So when we have a bad feeling or an uncomfortable feeling doesn't mean that uncomfortable equals bad, right? So just because I disagree with you doesn't mean that you're bad. You're not a bad person. You could be a very good person and you just strongly believe something that I don't. And you have your reasons, you have your research, you have your evidence. And whether I see that or not, whether I come around to that belief or not, I can appreciate that you feel strongly about that thing, and that there's a reason that you aren't necessarily believing that or doing that because you wish ill on people. Now, that's not to say that there aren't people out there who do wish ill on other people and who want bad things to happen. They are out there. I've heard, the sound bites. I've seen the videos, so I know they're out there. And that, Christians would be asked to pray for those people, because they're hurting for one reason or another. And, we would want to pray for them and help them to find, and see that love, and receive that love from other people in a way that hopefully helps them to overcome whatever that difficulty is. So, I hope all that made sense. I, can jump around a little bit. And this past weekend, we, in my church, we had a pretty well-known counselor, speaker, radio talk show host of sorts. I know he does a lot, so I'm probably messing it all up. But Jim Kress came and talked to our church, and he shared about agape love and talked about that unconditional love and what that might look like as us as human beings. So if that interests you at all, I'd encourage you to check out some of the things that he shares, or even the sermon that he had this past weekend at my church. We'll have that information for you in the links below. But if something you heard resonates, I just encourage you to maybe read into it and look into it a little more for yourself, and explore that. Because don't just trust everything that I say. We have to do our own research and improve upon things and look into things for ourselves, not just whatever other people tell us, because we don't know always everything we are hearing is true, especially in the world today. So thank you all for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful, loving weekend. And if you are celebrating going out with a spouse or partner, if you're going out for some Valentines with some girlfriends or friends, just enjoy each other's company, share that love that you have for each other, and praise each other, love each other, and hopefully you can grow and feel that love, and you can grow from that and feel that and let that carry you through some of those difficult moments. Have a wonderful rest of your day, a wonderful rest of your week. Happy Valentine's Day if you celebrate it. If you don't, have a lovely weekend. I will see you again next week.